welcome to this new video of Deep in Politics. So today we will be studying together the last Hello everyone and welcome to this new video of Deep in Politics. So today we will be studying and analyzing together the result of the 2020 presidential election in the battleground state of Arizona. So Arizona will be the last battleground state that we will be studying together. So this is a state that President Biden and the Democrat were able to flip. Indeed, the state was won in 2016 by President Trump by around 3.5 points, whereas President Biden was able to flip the state and to win it in the 2020 election by a small margin of 0.3 points. So what's happening in Arizona is very similar to what's happening in Nevada, which is the state that we studied last time. Indeed, in these two states there is a big immigration toward the state, so the population is rising quickly, and this is favoring the Democrat because, as I said in previous video, it's generally liberal people or people who tend to vote more for Democrat who are more used to migrate from a state to another, and this is helping the Democrat growing in the state of Nevada and ending up flipping the state after nearly 3 or 4 decades of the Republican domination. So indeed, as you see here, the population of the state has been growing sharply since the beginning of the 60s. You see that the population has passed from 1.3 million since the beginning of the 60s to more than 7.5 million in 2021. And so, as I said, this big migration toward the state, especially from the state of California, has heavily favored the Democrat who were able to turn the state blue in this 2020 election after a big domination of the Republican. So let's see the voting history of the state of Arizona. So as you see, the Republicans were able to control the state since 1976. At least they were able to win each and every election from 1976 to 2016. However, as you see, beginning the 90s, the margin between them and the Democrat was beginning to get smaller, ending up in the Democrat turning the state blue in the 2020 election. So before getting into details about the 2020 election result, let's see a little bit of data about the state. So as I said, it's a state that has a population of around 7.3 million. As you see, it's a very diversified state. White population only represent 54% of the population of the state, whereas you have a big part of Hispanic populations that represent 32% of the population of the state. And as you see here, let's go and see the bachelor degree percentage. It's around 30.2%, so it's a little bit lower than the average of the US. So when you see these numbers, you would expect maybe the Republican to do good here, because as we saw, they surged among Hispanic voters as well as white non-educated voters. However, these advantages were overwhelmed by the huge immigration toward the state of Arizona, which played in favor of the Democrat. So as usual, we will proceed in analyzing the result of the state by dividing the analysis in two parts. The first part where we will be talking about the small counties, and the second part where we will be analyzing the result in the big counties. And for this, we will move to our tables. So before going into details, we see here that compared to 2016, the Republican were able to gain 1% in the general votes, whereas the Democrat were able to gain around 5%, which enabled the Democrat to turn the state and to have a shift in their favor of 3.8%. That being said, let's move to the analysis of the result in small counties. So as you see in this chart, we have a total number of 9 small counties in Arizona. The Republican were able to improve in 5, whereas the Democrat were able to improve in 4. And this is very good for the Democrat because, as we've seen previously, it's the Republican who tend to improve very big in the small counties. However, here they only improve in one more small counties than the Democrat. So that being said, let's get into details a little bit. First, you will see the small counties where we have a majority of Hispanic voters, and it will be clear for us that it's the Republican who were able to surge big among Hispanic voters and to improve big in these counties compared to the 2016 election. So as you see in this chart, we have a total of 3 small counties where we have a majority of Hispanic populations and Hispanic voters, and we see that in all of these 3 counties it's the Republican who were able to improve big. As you see here, they were able to improve respectively by 5%, 12%, and 10% in the small counties where we have a majority of Hispanic voters, and this shows you how good and how important was the surge of Republican among the category of Hispanic voters. And if it wasn't from this surge, the Republican would have lost the state of Arizona by much more than 0.3%. And so, as I said previously, what the 2020 election showed us is that the Democrats are beginning to lose some ground among the category of Hispanic voters. It's a category where they have been dominant over the previous decades. However, it seems that a shift is beginning to take place, and you will see in the next election if the Republican will be able to build on this shift or at least to preserve it. However, if the Republican were able to improve big among Hispanic voters, and as we saw in previous counties, they lost big in the category of white voters, especially of white educated voters. And as you see here in this chart, here we are talking about the improvement made by each party in small counties where we have the majority of white voters. And as you see here, among a total of 4 such counties, the Republican were able to improve in 2, and the Democrat were also able to improve in 2. And so this is very striking because, as I said, you would expect the Republican to improve more in this category of counties, especially that generally small counties, and especially in Arizona, have a low percentage of bachelor degree. And as we said, the stronghold of Republican in this election were the category of white non-educated voters, white educated voters without a bachelor degree. So we would expect here the Republican to do better. However, it wasn't the case, and as you will see in the next chart, the main reason is that many of these counties were hit by a strong wave of migration which favored the Democrat. So as you see in this chart, this is a chart where we are talking about the voter increase compared to 2016 in small counties where we have a majority of white voters. So of course the blue colors refers to counties where the Democrats were able to improve, whereas the red colors refer to counties where the Republican were able to improve. And what we see is that in the small counties where the Democrats were able to improve, the increase in the number of voters compared to 2016 was higher than the increase of voters in the counties where the Republican improved. As we see here, in the 2 counties with a majority of white voters where the Democrat improved, there was an additional number of voters of 32% and of 30%, whereas in the ones where the Republican improved, the addition of voters or the voter increase was 20% and 27%. And if this tells us something about the small counties where we have a white majority of population, is that migration favored the Democrat, or to say it in other terms, Democrats were able to improve in counties where we have a white majority, as long as these counties were hit by a very important wave of migration. And the reason for Republican underperforming in these 2 counties is not that they lost part of their voter base, no, but it's that the overwhelming migration to these counties favored the Democrat a lot, and the Republican weren't able to make this loss in these counties. So that being said, let's just give an example of a small counties where the Republican were able to improve very importantly, and this shows how good the Republican were able to do among Hispanic voters. So the county that I chose is Santa Cruz County. Let's see some data about the Santa Cruz County. So as you see here, just let's wait for this to load. So as you see here, Santa Cruz County is a county where you have a little bit less than 50,000 voters, and as you see here, this is a heavily Hispanic county. Hispanic voters and Hispanic population represent a huge share of the total population. They represent more than 83% of the total population. And so in previous election, you would expect the Democrat to do very good here because, as I said, they are usually dominant among the category of white Hispanic voters. But what we will see is that it's the Republican who surged big in this county, and this proves how good they did among the category of Hispanic voters. As you see here, compared to 2016, the Republicans were able to gain 8% in the general votes. The result went up from 23.7% to 31.7%. This is a big improvement for the Republican, whereas the Democrat underperformed here. The result went down from 71.1% to 77.2%. Which shows a shift of around 12% in favor of the Republican compared to 2016. And this is very important for the Republican because I think that the only way that they will be able to take back the state of Arizona, especially that migration is still going on and favoring the Democrat here, is their surge among the category of Hispanic voters. If they manage to build on the surge that they had in this election, I think that they can win back the state of Arizona. So this is something to keep an eye on and to see what will happen in the future. Now that we've studied the small counties of the state of Arizona, it's time to move to the bigger county, to the big counties. So as you see in this chart, we have a total of 6 big counties in the state of Arizona, and here the Democrats were able to crush the Republican as they were able to improve in 5 out of 6 big counties, whereas the Republican were able to improve in only one of these counties, and as you will see, their improvement was very small. Now that being said, let's move to more charts in order to study in details the result in the big counties. So here we're talking about the percentage of improvement in big counties compared to 2016. So first, as we said previously, the Democrats were able to improve in 5 out of 6 big counties. But what is very important and what is striking is that the improvement of Democrat in the big counties was very important. Indeed, in 3 out of the 5 big counties that they were able to improve in, their improvement was more than by 5% compared to 2016, whereas the improvement of the Republican in the only big county where they improved was by only 0.2%, so it's a very small improvement that we cannot look to. And so this shows that the main reason for the Democrat being able to carry this state is their improvement in big counties. And why were they able to improve that big in big counties? Where the reason is simple. When you have migration toward a given state or immigration toward a given state, generally the newcomers will go often to bigger counties where there is more schools, where there is more services, and these counties are generally more advanced than small counties. And so generally when you are leaving your state to another one, you aim to go to a more complete county, and the bigger counties offer this. And so, as I said, it's the big migration toward big counties in Arizona that made the Democrat flip this state in their favor. And what will prove my point, which is that it's the immigration toward the big counties of Arizona that made the Democrat win the state, is the following chart, the last chart that we will be studying together today. As you see here, in all of the counties where the Democrats were able to improve, there was a huge wave of migration hitting these counties. As you see, in all the counties where the Democrats were able to improve, there was a increase in the number of voters by more than 30%, and in 2 of these counties we have 40% of voter increase and around 51% of voter increase. So that being said, we've ended our study of the state of Arizona, and if I want to give a small conclusion, I would say that the state of Arizona has been recently trending toward the Democrat because of the effect of immigration, and they were finally able to flip it in the 2020 election. But in my opinion, it's not only immigration that played in favor of the Democrat. Indeed, everything that preceded the 2020 election played in their favor, whereas it's the political crisis that took place, like the Black Lives Matter protest, or even the coronavirus, the corona outbreak virus that President Trump wasn't able to handle good enough. All of these, with immigration, of course, had the Democrat win the state. This means that the state of Arizona is not a lost cause for the Republican. Indeed, they can win it back, but they will have to work hard. First of all, they will have to keep the gains that they made among the category of Hispanic voters. Second, of course, they need to get back a certain number of white voters, especially in the category of white educated voters. So the state of Arizona, what is sure for now, it's from now on, it will be a battleground state. It's not a safe red state anymore. I will even give a small edge, a small advantage for the Democrat in the upcoming election. However, it's important and it will be interesting to see how this state will go on in the future. So that being said, we've finished our analysis of the 2020 presidential election of the United States of America, and from now on we will be focusing more on the upcoming election, whereas it's the midterm election in 2022 or the upcoming presidential election in 2024. And for the next video, we will be analyzing and we will be seeing how President Biden is doing so far in his first mandate, and how this will affect the Democrat and the Republican in the next elections. So thank you for following me, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next week in a new video of Deep in Politics.